Hi guys, this is David here from Write On Resources, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Prelude by William Wordsworth. So this is the first video where we're going to have an overview of the poet, so William Wordsworth, and we're going to analyse the first part of the poem. Whenever you look at a new poem, it's really important that you are able to get some contextual information about the poet and the time that it was written. So for William Wordsworth, he was born in the 7th of April 1770 in Cumberland, England, so that is in the Lake District within the UK. Wordsworth's parents, John and Anne, died during his boyhood. Now the reason why I've included this piece of information is because I'd like you to think about the devastating impact this would have on a young person's life. Wordsworth often uses his own experiences and experiences within life within his poems, and that's going to have a big effect on some of the things that he includes in his poems. The poem recounts something that really happened to Wordsworth, so it's a true account of what happened. And he grew up in a rustic society and spent a great deal of time playing outdoors. So he didn't have his parents, unfortunately. His sister as well was also sent away, so he spent a lot of time being quite isolated, being quite alone, and to deal with this he spent a lot of time going around the Lake District and exploring the natural wonder that he had surrounding himself. Now we're going to take a look at the first part of the poem. So it says, "One summer evening, led by her, I found a little boat tied to a willow tree within a rocky cove, its usual home. Straight I unloosened her chain, and stepping in, pushed from the shore. It was an act of stealth and troubled pleasure, nor without the voice of mountain echoes did my boat move on." So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to start making annotations. If you've already done this in your anthology, maybe compare them with the notes that you've made during your lessons and see if there's anything extra you can add to your own ideas. So the first thing that you might have already noticed is this bit here, led by her, and it is captioned there with the use of parentheses. Now, when it says her, what Wordsworth has done is he has personified nature. You might notice that whenever someone talks fondly of something that isn't truly alive, they'll often attribute a female characteristic to it, and we can see that with that personal pronoun of her. This might imply that Wordsworth feels a fondness and a love for nature, because that is normally the things we associate with the female form as well. The next thing is "straight I unloosened her chain." Now this is an important thing for two reasons. Again, it's that personification that's carried on, further reinforced there by that personal pronoun of her, and also the fact that it says a chain. Now, although there's no massive connotations associated with the use of this word, we might be able to infer that chain implies that it shouldn't be something that is locked away, that it should be free to wallow and to go around in nature and to be one with the water that surrounds it. It was an act of stealth. Now this is a strange part in this poem because we notice a complete change from this beautiful idyllic kind of scene of nature that we got at the start of the poem. So it's an act of stealth. Normally we associate that word with stealth with an act of crime or something that we maybe just shouldn't be doing. And this is further reinforced as it goes on. So we've got that negative imagery creeping in there. So it isn't something he's supposed to be doing. He is actually stealing a boat, and he does feel somewhat bad about it. And we can see that in the line where it says, "and troubled pleasure." Now, hopefully you'll know that this is an oxymoron. So you've got two conflicting or contrasting words of the word troubled and pleasure. So it tells us that he feels troubled because he knows it is wrong to steal the boat, but at the same time, he's enjoying the pleasure of being one with nature and getting out onto the water. So now we're going to move on to the next part of the poem. So it says, "Leaving behind her still, on either side, small circles glittering idly in the moon, until they melted all into one track of sparkling light. But now, like one who rose proud of his skill to reach a chosen point with an unwavering line, I fixed my view upon the summit of a craggy ridge at the horizon's utmost boundary. Far above was nothing but the stars and the grey sky." So the first thing I'd identify within this part of the poem is this word here, idly. Now this is not a word that we commonly use in everyday English. What it means is a sense of laziness, right? If you're idle, it means that you don't do much, that you're lazy, or that you're very laid back. In this case, I think this refers to the idea of the water being personified. Okay, so obviously water cannot be lazy, but it gives us a sense of the calm and the relaxedness that's associated with nature. Nature doesn't need to worry or fret about the things that we worry about in human nature, because nothing is actually stronger than the force of the natural world. The next one is this idea of the moon. Now, a lot of literature, especially Gothic literature, will use things like the moon to talk about the magical properties that are associated with it. And this kind of gives us a sense of a dreamlike kind of magical state where this person is going out on the water at night. So you have to think, what kind of imagery is it being created here as well? You've got this sense of imagery here as well with sparkling light. Now light has got some very powerful connotations, very positive imagery. It also might be linked to biblical references as well. Light always representing what is pure, what is right and what is good. Upon the summit of a craggy ridge. Now when Wordsworth is talking about that, he's showing us that he is full of confidence and heading for the targeted destination. He's heading for the summit, which is the uppermost part of the ridge, and he's determined and strong in his assertions. He knows what he wants and he knows what he's going to target. At the end of the passage, we have but the stars and the grey sky, and this again helps to give us a really beautiful picture of nature and really helps to convey this romantic sense that Wordsworth had of the surroundings that he grew up in as well. We're now going to move on and look at the next part of the poem. So it says, "She was an elfin pinnace. Lustily I dripped my oar into the silent lake, and as I rose upon the stroke, my boat went heaving through the water like a swan, when from behind that craggy steep till then, the horizon's bound a huge peak, black and huge, as if with voluntary power instinct, upreared its head." The first thing that we should identify is this strange kind of phrase here. She was an elfin pinnace. So when they're talking about that, this is referring to the childlike excitement that Wordsworth is experiencing during this encounter with the nature. So elfin refers to the mythical creatures of elves, and that links back to the kind of typical childish imagination. It's getting really excited and his imagination is running wild. A pinnace is a type of boat, so that's the kind of boat that he's actually imagining that he's using, right? It's actually a very, very small boat, but in his imagination it's something a lot larger, something much more grand than what is actually realistically in at the time. The next word is lustily. Now this is a strange word because it's normally something that we associate with a deep and powerful desire. This helps to reinforce his great love and his great desire to head towards his target. When we look at the next part, we've got went heaving through the water like a swan. Now heaving is a verb, it's a very powerful verb, it suggests strength and it suggests power. So in this part we're imagining the boat speeding along towards its destination, and it kind of contrasts here. You've got a really strong word of heaving which contrasts with the simile that is used later on, so like a swan. So swans are things that we normally associate with as being quite calm and quite graceful, but it's heaving as well. So it's giving this kind of strange imagery, really looking like a swan and yet it's going with a lot of force and a lot of power, which we wouldn't normally associate with that type of animal. Now this next part is where things really start to turn for the poet, or the speaker of the poem in this case. So a huge peak, black and huge. So you've got the repetition there of huge, you've got the negative imagery there of black as well, and this is where nature starts to turn the tables. Suddenly he's getting a real realization of the power and the strength that nature holds. Then we've got this last part. As if with voluntary power instinct upreared its head. Now this is probably one of the most important parts of the poem in my mind. So when it says it's got a voluntary power instinct, to him it seems like it's alive and can act on its own, and it finally uprears its head. So it's making out that this thing can actually lift up from the ground and come forward like some kind of beast or some kind of monster. In reality, that isn't what's happening. We also have to imagine he's a very small child when this is happening. He's going out onto water at night time, which again is the kind of thing we wouldn't necessarily think is a good idea these days. So as he gets closer and closer to the summit, he's suddenly overwhelmed by the force and the strength of nature. We have there again personification. It's uprearing its head, making it sound animalistic and potentially quite monstrous as well. Okay, so we're just going to pause now on actually analysing the poem, and what I'd like you to do is think about answering these 3 quickfire questions to test your understanding. So the first one says, how has Wordsworth presented nature in the poem? So think about what we've just read, think about the themes and the kind of sense that you got from the part that we just covered. Number 2, how does this begin to change in the 3rd section, so the bit that we just looked at? Number 3, what tone or mood does the poem have? And try and recall a quotation to justify your answer. If you'd like to pause the video now to focus on the questions, please feel free to do so. We will have another video coming up very shortly where we look at the next part of the poem as well. If you like this video or if you need any additional help or support, then please give us a like and subscribe. You can also visit our partner channel, Bookworm Teaching, for more lessons and guidance on all things English. And as I said on the previous slide, our next video will be uploaded very shortly where we look at the second half of the poem as well. Best of luck guys, and thank you for your time.